The scripture reading this morning is taken from 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 1 to 13. Now Ahab told Jezebel everything Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with the sword. So Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah to say, "May the gods deal with you, be it ever so severely, if by this time tomorrow I do not make your life like one of them." Elijah was afraid, and he ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servant there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush and sat down under it and prayed that he might die. "I have had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life. I am no better than my ancestors." Then he lay down under the bush and he fell asleep. All at once an angel touched him and said, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over the hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then lay down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, because the journey is too much for you. Is too much for you." So he got up and he ate and he drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and he spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. May God add his blessing to this reading. Have you ever seen any of the articles online referring to the phrase, "I was today days old when I realized something"? So I thought this morning we would start off our message with a few of those. Have you ever noticed that the N on the 7-Eleven sign is lowercase? No. The owners of 7-Eleven did that because they felt like an uppercase N would seem rather aggressive on the sign, so that's why they did the lowercase. Let's go to the next one. Okay, Amazon. It's my favorite place to shop. I love Amazon. If you've never gone and shopped on Amazon, don't start. And why is it so great? Because it has everything from A to Z, just like the arrow on the sign, A to Z. Okay, Arby's. Did you know that it's known for its roast beef? Arby's, roast beef. Did you know that? That's why it's called Arby's. Okay, this blew my mind this week. How many of you have used these Glade things before and have done it, they unwrapped the little paper and lifted it up? Did you know the top raises up? I did not know that the top raised up. That blew my mind this week when I saw that. Yeah, you're all laughing at me now. Yeah, that's okay. Who hasn't had a juice box? And when you've put the straw in and you've held it and you've squeezed it and half the juice comes out of the straw? Did you know the juice boxes are made with those flaps so you hold the flaps and not the box? That's why those flaps are there. It's so you don't squeeze the juice all over you. I did not know that. Baskin & Robbins. Can you see the pink 31? Baskin & Robbins has 31 flavors of ice cream. But they always have new stuff, so they like throw the other stuff out, or they just like using it, I don't know. And this last one really got me. Because we use staples for our office supplies. Did you see that the L is a half-open staple? There you go, somebody didn't know. That's great. So, have you ever noticed these things before? I hadn't, because I guess I didn't pay that close attention to the details. But that happens We can miss so many little details because we aren't looking or listening close enough. All we see is the bigger picture, and it's only when someone points them out to us that we see them. Today, we're going to be spending some time with Elijah and his experiences with God, both the big and powerful ones, as well as the small, quiet ones. This morning, I want to talk about how we often miss hearing God's voice because we're looking for big, obvious signs instead of listening for his still, small voice. There's so much noise in our life that we don't hear him. How it's important to make changes so that we could recognize him when he speaks to us and see where he is present in the little details of our lives. Elijah, as you may know, was a prophet during the reign of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. And if you're interested, you can find their story in 1 Kings 17, 18, and 19. These rulers over Israel actively worked against God. They promoted the worship of Baal, an idol, over God. And they made it their life's mission to destroy Elijah as well as all of the other prophets that were appointed by God at that time. Elijah was specifically chosen by God to confront their evil ways and warn them of the consequences of their actions. But they refused to stop what they were doing. And during this time, Israel was experiencing a devastating drought, and the country was struggling greatly because of it. The drought had been going on for 3 years when God called Elijah to confront them one more time. They went to Mount Carmel for a showdown between Elijah, the people of Israel, and Ahab, along with all of the prophets of Baal. Elijah challenged them all to make a decision to follow God and reject Baal. He issued a challenge to the prophets of Baal. They both were to set up a wooden altar with a sacrifice on it, but they did not light it. The God who answered the call to set fire to the wood would be the one true God. And of course, we know that Baal did not show up. God moved mightily during that confrontation by burning up the bull, the wood, the stones, the dust, and even the water that Elijah had put down there. He also ended the drought by sending a terrific rainstorm. Elijah then put an end to the prophets of Baal, and when Jezebel heard what Elijah had done, she swore to kill him. So Elijah ran for his life. Despite these two amazing spiritual victories, the sacrifice and the drought being ended, Elijah felt exhausted and incredibly discouraged. He felt that he was the only faithful one left in all of Israel. God let him rest, fed him and sheltered while he made his way back to Mount Sinai, or Horeb, as was mentioned in the reading. When he made it there, God asked him why he was there, and Elijah explained how discouraged and alone he felt despite his best efforts to follow him. So God told him to go outside. He presented him with an amazing audio-visual display of his power. A mighty windstorm, a massive earthquake, and then a great fire. But he wasn't in any of those things. Instead, he showed up in a still, small voice, a quiet whisper that Elijah knew well, with an answer that he was not alone and that God would be with him. It was a reminder to Elijah and to us that God is here with us always. He doesn't always show up in big, loud ways. Often, it's in the quiet whispers that we find him. Wouldn't it be much easier, though, if God was more obvious? If he showed up with a big sign saying, "Here I am, this is the way to go, do this, do that. Everything's fixed." I think we look for God to show up like that because we want things to be done right away. We want things to be clear. We want to know what's happening. We want him to be in that situation right then and right now. And we get frustrated when this doesn't happen. Why is that? I think it's because we live in an age where everything is immediate. We get immediate results. Like Amazon. You want a book, you go on, you click, you buy, it's done. It's right there at your house. Ask my husband, I have tons of Amazon packages that show up all the time. It's one-click shopping, instant internet. Everything is just one click away on our smartphones. We're so used to getting what we want when we want it, and right away. While God does move that quickly sometimes and that dramatically sometimes, he doesn't always. I can recall one time in my life, there's a couple, but this is the one that sticks out the most to me, where I received an instant answer to prayer. It was 11 years ago, and I was a youth pastor at Agincourt. And I'd been there about 7 years, and I was sensing that it was possibly time to move on. And I was really struggling with that. I didn't know what direction to go in, so I skipped out of vocal at senior music camp, and I took a walk, and I went down to the lake at Lake Simcoe, and I sat on the rocks there, and I built this little tower, I guess, of rocks, and every rock was a worry or a concern that I had that I wanted God to take care of. Now, I'd been struggling for a long time, and this was the first time that I'd prayed about it. I was looking for my own strength. I was trying to do it by myself, and of course things were not working. So I spent time building this little tower of prayer and concerns, and every rock I prayed over. I say, I'm giving this to you, God. So I did that. I spent some time just in the quietness, watching the water, and I remember getting up and walking back because it was lunchtime and I never miss a meal. I wasn't about to miss this one either. And I was walking back up and my phone went. And it was Major Max Sturge. And he said, hey, Shona, how would you feel about coming for an interview here at Oshawa? That was 11 years ago. I'm not crying, so anyone's got a bet on me, you're not going to win it. That was 11 years ago, just right about now actually, and I've been here for 11 years, which has been an amazing time, and God showed up that quickly. I remember that, but he doesn't always show up like that. To only look for him to move in big, obvious ways means that we can miss out seeing where he's moving in the quieter and more gentler ways. The ones you see when you look back over what's happened, and you can see where God was moving, where God was speaking, where God was. This reminds me of the illustration of the man sitting on a roof while the floodwaters were rising, and he was praying to God for help. So he's sitting on his roof, and a man in a rowboat comes along, and he shouts to the man on the roof, "Jump in, I can save you." The stranded man says, "Nope, I'm good. I've prayed to God and he's going to save me." So the rowboat goes on. Then a motorboat came by. The man in the motorboat shouted, "Jump in, I can save you." To this, the stranded man said again, "Nope, it's good. I prayed to God. God is going to rescue me. It's all good. Thank you very much. I have faith." So the motorboat went on. Then a helicopter came by, because by now there's barely any roof left. The pilot shouted down, "Grab this rope and I will lift you to safety." To this, the stranded man said again, "No thanks. I'm praying to God and he is going to save me. I have faith." So the helicopter reluctantly flew away. Soon the water rose above the rooftop and the man drowned. He went to heaven. He finally got his chance to discuss this whole situation with God, at which point he exclaimed, "I had faith in you, but you didn't save me. You let me drown. I don't understand why." To this, God replied, "I sent you a rowboat, a motorboat, and a helicopter. What more do you want?" He was waiting for God to rescue him in his big, amazing way when he sent 3 things. He ignored all the ordinary attempts that God had sent his way to rescue him. We get so caught up looking for big gestures from God that we miss the small, subtle ways that he uses too. We miss hearing that still, small voice. Elijah had experienced both the big and small gestures. He witnessed the instant power of might of God on Mount Carmel, the shelter, the food, the rest on the way to Mount Sinai, the display of the wind, the earthquake, and the fire, and then the still small whisper that Elijah recognized right away because he knew God's voice. So why does he speak in a still small voice, and how do we recognize him? I believe it's because, especially these days, he needs us to slow down. He needs us to take a breath, to be still, so we can listen to him. Did you notice when Ellison got those kids to scream, scream, and scream, and then they stopped? There was silence. You could hear a pin drop. He needs us to be that quiet so that we can hear him. He knows that we need a break from all the noise and the chaos in this world, so he gives us an opportunity to do that. So how do we hear him and recognize him? The first thing we need to do is clear out the clutter, both physically and mentally. Our minds cannot rest when we're surrounded by clutter. And I spoke to the ladies at Women's Ministries on Tuesday afternoon about how a good clear out can still your mind and help you focus on what's important. Clearing out physical clutter can be easier sometimes than clearing out a cluttered life, but both are important. But a cluttered life requires us to do more than just clean out our junk drawer. I love to make lists, and I find that when I'm feeling overwhelmed by everything that's going on in my life, usually I'm feeling overwhelmed because I haven't given things to God. Let's just put that out there right now. I take the time to sit down and build my little tower of rocks. Sometimes I write notes. Sometimes I do it with physical things, but this is sometimes, most of the time, I write a list. I make a list of everything that bothers me, everything that is keeping me distracted from God, anything that's on my mind, things that are weighing me down. In essence, what I'm doing is making a list of all the things that distract me from spending time with God. Once I've made that list, I pray over it. Then I start to prioritize what's the most important. Taking a step back from the noise and activity of my busy life gives me an opportunity to meet with God. Then we need to be intentional about creating space and time to meet with him. In our busy lives, it can be easy to get caught up in the tasks of the day without ever sitting down with him. I made a decision a couple of years ago to get up early, to go for a walk and do my devotions before getting on with the day. I sacrifice an hour of sleep, but really, it's the most important hour of my day. While I walk, I talk to God about anything and everything. I thank him for the blessings that he gives me in the world that we live in. When I sit down to do my devotions, I listen to him. It's not always easy because your mind wanders. You have to be intentional. You have to focus on him. We have to slow down. We have to create a space in our time, in our days, and in our homes to sit and be with God. I watched a video as part of my classes that I'm doing right now in chaplaincy, and it was a video with Bill Hybels talking about where's your chair. And it's where's your time, where's your place in your home that is intentionally set aside to sit and meet with God. Create a space that is calm and quiet and away from distractions. And it might not be in your home. You might not be able to do it there. It may need to be someplace else. Being still and being quiet requires us to be intentional. And while we're doing that, we need to ask him to reveal himself to us and to help us recognize him when he does. Ask and it shall be given. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be opened. From Matthew 7:7. If you ask him to reveal himself, he will. It might not be in the way that you expect, though, much like the man on the roof waiting to be rescued. When you look for him, you will see him. He may show up in a timely text from a friend, an unexpected phone call, a Facebook post that you read, a sermon topic. He may speak through a friend, through your devotional book, through a song that you're listening to, a Bible verse that just keeps popping up. When you spend time with him, when you read his word, when you sit and you listen, you get to know his voice. You get to see him, you get to understand him, you get to hear him. It's that quiet whisper, that encouraging word, an arm around your shoulder from a friend, that feeling that you're not alone. You're not alone. Our God is a God of details. He's in the details. He's not a distant God. He's intimately involved with each one of us in every aspect of our lives. It's the voice that asks us to be there for someone else, to be his hands and his feet in his world, and this world, and his world. And when he speaks to us, we need to act on it. What he is asking us to do could be an answer to prayer for someone else. You may be his still small voice to another person. We need to come alongside each other more, to encourage each other and to share God's love. There's far too much in this world that tears us down, that makes us feel alone and makes us feel discouraged. Let's not do that to one another. We're a family here. We're a family in our community. You have a family at home. You have a family in your neighbors. God's family. They need to hear from you. They need to know that you are there for them, just like God is there for them. Elijah expected God to be present in dramatic manifestations and astounding miracles. And so he is, sometimes. But to a prophet at the end of his tether, drained of strength and wishing he were dead, it wasn't the supernatural displays of power, but God's whispered word that spoke to him at his time of crisis. A loaf of bread, a gentle nudge, drink, eat, rest, shelter from the sun. A big part of the Lord's dealings with Elijah was to correct his warped perceptions of how things were. That he wasn't alone. He wasn't the only one. That God was there. And this is where we can learn so much that will reassure and encourage us, especially when we feel at the end of our tether. So where does this leave you today? Are you waiting for God to move in big dramatic ways? Can you take a step back and recognize where he is showing himself to you? Are you able to recognize God's still small voice? Or do you need to make some changes so that you can hear him? Do you feel that he is silent? There are times when we feel that God may be absent from our lives. We feel abandoned and alone. While he may be silent, he is never absent. He is always there. He has not gone to sleep. He has not forgotten you. You are not on your own. When we reach the end of our resources, we have only come to the beginning of his. We need to put our trust in him and know that he will never leave us or forsake us. Or as Jesus said, I give them eternal life and they shall never perish. No one can snatch them out of my hand. What a promise that is. We are his. We are in his hands. He is there. We're going to spend some time in quiet reflection, and we're going to sing a song based on Psalm 51, verse 10. This is something that's been on my heart and on my mind for the last couple of weeks. And it says this, create in me a clean heart, O God, and renew a right spirit within me. We need to declutter our lives to create time and space for God to speak into our lives. This means removing any distractions that keep us from hearing his voice or spending time with him. Creating me a clean heart. Take away everything that is stopping me from hearing you and seeing you. Renew a right spirit in me. Help me right now, in this moment, to start fresh, to trust you and know that you are there. I'm asking him right now to do that for me. I want him to help me refocus my attention back onto God, onto him. I want to recognize his hand in my life and his voice when he speaks to me. I want to slow down and be still so that I can listen. Our place of prayer is open if you want to use it today. Maybe you want to ask him to reveal himself to you. Maybe you need to hear his voice. Maybe you need an encouragement from someone else. Maybe you want to pray for other people. Maybe you'd like to thank him for what he is doing in your life. As we sing this song, I want you to think about that. Think about what he's saying to you right now. Amen.